Boker Tov, today's daf is daf Samach Ches in קידושין. Yesterday at the end of the daf, we were discussing this issue. Why is it, and again we learned for Shlema and for Kol Achen Kol Beis Yisrael and soon about Sarah B'Shivya. Mishnah said Kol Shen of קידושין, if there's no קידושין, קידושין cannot apply, cannot be executed between this man and this woman, but you could marry somebody else. In other words, for example, man can't marry his sister, or a sister can marry somebody else, right? So in a case like that, if he sleeps with a sister, it gives a mamzer. Horrible example, right? Incest. But let's say a sister-in-law, somebody like that he can't marry her, but she can marry somebody else, then the kid would be a mamzer. So the Gemara said, okay, right, we know mamzeris from elsewhere. We learned that in Yavamas. How do we know that the Kedushin is not chal? So the Gemara searched for different ways. The Gemara came out that we learned out from Achos Isha. Just like by Achos Isha, we find that Kedushin doesn't apply. There's no Kedushin by Achos Isha. That's excluded from a pasuk. And therefore, Achos Isha b'kores and l'sikish chagles and l'kol shein. So we said, just like by, even it's b'di'eved, we said it's l'chachila and b'di'eved. So, and maybe if you learn it out based on Kal V'chomer, maybe you can't learn it out that way. So the Gemara came out, we have a hekesh, colorized kul machos isha, just like a chos isha lo tafsi ba kedushin. Excuse me, kedushin is not chal by a chos isha. Right, we learned that from Sukkim. We learned how lo yikach isha seshes aviv. That's how we know that a son cannot take his father's ex-wife, and that's next to the word mamzer. So we know there that's how we know that if you a union of a forbidden marriage in that sense, where the punishment is death, even by that's in that case it's even by Mises Bezdin, but also by if it's kares. So we say that there's kedushin is not chal in those cases. So there's no kedushin. But how do we know in all cases? Not only by Achos Isha and by others. The Gemara said, you could say Achos Isha is different because there's no heter mitzvah, whereas Eishasach there is a heter mitzvah, and Eishasish, the person that forbids her, there is a heter in his lifetime. For example, if a man's marriage to a woman forbids her from marrying somebody else, but if he divorces her, she could marry somebody else. So it's not maybe as difficult as Achos Isha. So how do we know? The answer is it's all a hekesh. It's not necessarily a kal v'chomer or a comparison, a binyanav, but it's rather a hekesh. That's how we learn it from Achos Isha. Okay, so the Gemara says, fine. Okay, maybe that's by Achos Isha. You learn out of hekesh, but we have another place you can learn out from nida. Nida is also an isur kares. If you sleep with a nida, you're chayiv kares for that. So maybe you learn from nida, but yet by nida, kedushin is chal. Again, the issue we're discussing is not mamzerus. Yes, these forbidden marriages will bring mamzerus, as we learn out again from lo yichish eshes aviv, and next to that talks about a mamzer, that whenever there's no kedushin, the vlad's a mamzer. But how do we know the kedushin is not chal? Maybe kedushin can be chal, and it's still there's a mamzer. Kedushin's chal, maybe there's a mamzer. So you say we learn from Achos Isha, but maybe by nida, kedushin is chal there, even though it's an isur kares. So why do we say that everybody's motive? If a man, for example, sleeps with a nida, first of all, he can have kedushin with a nida. Many chuppahs are what we call chuppahs nida, and yet kedushin is chal. Similarly, if a person slept with a nida, the kid's not a mamzer. If that would be the case, almost all non-religious Jewish people, their children would be mamzerim. So, but that we don't say that a nida or a sota, even though we learned out of a pasuk, the kid's not a mamzer. And how do we know? Because we have a special pasuk with tini dasalov. You just need the there is there too. But learn out the other ones from there. So the Gemara says, okay, kula b'chumra makshinam. If you could compare all the other arayos either to a nida, which is in a kares, and their kedushin is chal, or compared to Achos Isha, and their kedushin is not chal. So we'll say l'chumra kedushin is not chal. This is where we left off yesterday. We're about the 8th line down on Samach Esamdal. How do you know that kedushin is not chal? Again, what's our issue? How do you know kedushin is not chal where there's an isur? So he says, learn off from Yavama. My Yavama shehi balab. A Yavama is not allowed to marry somebody else until her yavam either does even or chalitza. Let's say she marries somebody else. The pasuk says, "Lo sia eishes hameis, lo sia eishes hameis achutza leisar." How do we know that if she does marry somebody, even though it's in Isra Lav, Kedushin is not chal because it's a lo sia. Ma yavam ishi balav lo tafsi ba Kedushin. Rashi explains that Yavam l'shuk shein kedushin tosim what can Omer Revs menayin shein kedushin tosim Yavam it'll say lo sia eishes hameis achutza leisar lo say by avaya kedushin is not chal. So Mavach says you don't have to come on to learn enough machos isha from a hekish, learn enough from Yavama Marach Yavam, which is only in Isra Lav. It's not in Isra Kares. We're not all the other isurim like marrying your daughter-in-law or your mother-in-law or all the other forbidden unions of a family. Those are Isra. This is only in Isra Lav. If the Yavama does not wait for chalitza or even she marries somebody else, it's only Isra Lav. Yet kedushin is not chal. Something where you're chayv misas bezna or chayv kares min hashamayim lo kolshkein, certainly kedushin should not be chal. That's our Rav Meir Shapiro says Morihachi shar chayv elavanam. If that's the case, other chayv elavan also should not be kedushin should not be chal. What's our general rule? If a kohen marries a grusha today, we said right kedushin is chal. You're not supposed to, and the kid's not a kohen, the kid's a chal and all that, but kedushin is chal. Right? We generally say that chayv by chalav, not like Rabbi Kiva, who says kedushin any isser any isser of marriage produces a mamzer. We hold the chayv elavan kedushin is chal. So if you're saying out from the case of Yavam l'shuk that kedushin is not chal, so maybe it's not a kal v'chomer. Okay, if you say that Yavam l'shuk kedushin is not chal, and that's only a lav. So we say kal v'chomer. Rav Meir says kal v'chomer, chayv increases and chayv bezin. Certainly kedushin should not be chal. Okay, so. In a chayv you don't have a kal v'chomer to other lav, but you have a matzah, you have a binyanav, you have a comparison. If by Yavam l'shuk we say kedushin is not chal because we darshan the pasuk of lo sia eishes hameis achutz leisar that there's no havaya there, there's no marriage. So other chayv elavan also maybe kedushin is not chal. In other words, let's say a kohen marrying a grusha, maybe kedushin is not chal. Amar Papa no chayv elav medik sipu. We have a specific pasuk that tells us that in general, when there's an isser and it's only a lav, it's not chorus or misas bezdin. How do we know? The pasuk says, at the beginning of Kisei Kiseno Kisiyeno Liish Shtei Nashim Moachas Ovavachas Nuah V'Yodula Ovanim Moachas V'Ava Ben Abchor Lasniah. Right? If you have two sons, one from a beloved wife and one from a non-beloved wife, right? So you can't show favorites. The oldest son, he's the bechor, he gets the double share, right? No matter even if he came from the hated wife. What does that mean, the hated wife and the unhated wife? So, Rashi Darshans, we have the Gemara about that too. The snua is the one that that's based on Eishes Yifas Toar, and she's going to have a Ben Sarah Mora, that whole drasha over there. But the Pashpan says, what do you mean one is beloved, one's not? What does love or hated have to do with Hashem's rules about Yerusha, about inheritance laws? Does a person's love for one wife over another have an influence on God's rules about inheritance? God gives us the rules for inheritance. Yes, you can get around them by giving everything away while you're alive, right? But if a person dies, you go according to the rules of the Torah, without any will, without any instructions. You go according to the rules of the Torah. What does that mean? What does it mean? It means that she had a God loves her marriage. Meaning it was a marriage. It was a sinful marriage. It was a marriage that was a forbidden marriage. Which means a forbidden marriage, unapproved marriage, right? Well, it's really illegal. An illegal marriage, according to the Torah, it was a sinful marriage, meaning you weren't supposed to marry her. Like a kohen marrying a grusha, a man marrying a mamzeres, whatever. It was a forbidden marriage. Become rachmana, kisiyena. Kisiyena. It's still havaya. Havaya means it exists. It takes place. The marriage takes place. Meaning, even though one marriage is, let's say, is confirmed by God, is a chassid, that was a regular marriage. That's an approved marriage, a sanctioned marriage. And then that's an unsanctioned marriage, illegal or whatever. What was the word you used? There was a disapproved marriage. and yet it's a marriage. It says Kisiena. So we see over here that we have a pasuk telling us that Kisiena, even if it's a non-approved marriage, is still a marriage. Okay, Yivam L'Shuk was an exception because it says Losia Bohavaya, like Losia is Shemes, but here it says Kisiena. There is. Okay, so Rav Acha bar Yaakov's proof still stands. How do we know that the real ervas, there's no kedushin there? It's a kal v'chomer from Yivam L'Shuk. Okay, so maybe all of them there? No, all of them you don't say because kisi hiena. Rabbi Kiva, the main caterers, Rabbi Kiva's famous shita. We don't pass like him, but he says kedushin is not topus by chai v'lavin, any chai v'lavin. According to Rabbi Kiva, if a kohen marries a grusha, they're not married. Yeah, the child would be a halal, but the marriage is not a marriage. They're not married at all. She doesn't need a get. And kedushin does chai v'lavin. Kisiana b'may mokum. So what does he do with Kisiana? Kisiana is clearly telling us that even though there was an unapproved marriage, it works. So how does he say that in kedushin comes from chai v'lav? My mukla. The almana l'kohen gadol. Very simple. They'll talk about an almana kohen gadol, which is what? Which is an isser asay. It's not an isser lav. It doesn't say. Well, it does say. It says almana l'kohen gadol. V'ahu d'tav say kedushin the gadol rachmana et eina blad mamzer elcha. Why is that? No. Why is that? No. There is a lav there. But that's an exception to Rabbi Kiva's rule. Rav Simoy, the time of Simoy Omer, then I call Rabbi Kiva also mamzer. Rabbi Kiva made every forbidden marriage the product of any marriage was a mamzer. Chutz mi'almana kohen gadol. Why? Even though it says almana grusha zona lo yikach, there is a lav there. Shoyom Torah the process lo yichalel. If a kohen takes an almana lo yichal, he makes a chilul mosa ve'enos mamzeres. Special pasuk telling you that it only makes halal, which is what is halal? Damaged, right? He's a halal. He's ruined. He's very profane. Osevenosim doesn't make a mamzer. Doesn't make a bastard, huh? But profane. Not that's profane. It's not a bastard. Okay, so how is Rabbi Kiva holds that kedusha is not tofes b'chai v'lavin, right? And he was just like Yivam L'Shuk, it's not tofes. So where is the case that it is tofes? He'll say it's tofes b'almana kohen gadol. Why? Because over there's a special rule, like Rav Samoy says, that Rabbi Kiva said in general, any lav, according to Rabbi Kiva, produces a mamzer, except almana kohen gadol, because there it says lo yichal zaro b'amav, telling you lo yichal chilunos v'enos mamzeres. Okay, Rav Sheva doesn't look like Rav Samoy. He says, no, let's go and cry against Akiva, Rabbi Kiva and Yosef, that's Rabbi Kiva. Because Rav Sheva says that Rabbi Kiva said any unapproved, any disapproved marriage produces a mamzer, anything at all. Asay, los, asay, anything. So what are you going to say here? What is he going to do with Kisiena? What kind of a disapproved marriage there is actually takes place? If he's just trying to exclude from Rav Samoy said, even though there's a law by Almana l'Kohen Gadol, but there it's only Chalula and that Enos Mamzeris, and he says, no, I don't hold that drasha. He holds that even Rabbi Sheva was trying to say, even Almana l'Kohen Gadol, Rabbi Kiva would also say is a mamzer, because he's shopper. So you could say, you know what? If he's only come to exclude from Rabbi Kiva, it says Kol She'en B'Yisrael, meaning any lav produces a mamzer. So you know what the pasuk you see now? If it's not a lav, let's say it's in Isra Asay. What's in Isra Asay? We talked yesterday about Mitzri and Adomi. After they convert, the first two generations, you're not allowed to marry them. You can't marry a Mitzri or an Adomi after he converted, or his child. The third generation is already like an Israeli, like a Jew, not Israeli, a Jewish person can marry you can marry a third generation, but not a first and second. Oh, but if you marry first and second, that's an Asay. That's over. It's not a lav, right? It says mitzvah adomi. It says dor shlishiyah. The other one's not. You can't marry the first second. It's only a lav. So maybe Rabbi Kiva. Who is the snua? So what's the disapproved marriage that still produces a marriage? Oh, maybe it's an Isra Asay. If Rav Shapiro is saying in general, he's not just trying to exclude Rav Samoy, who said that Almana l'Kohen Gadol according to Rabbi Kiva doesn't produce a mamzer because it's a special exception. He says no. Even Almana l'Kohen Gadol says Rabbi Sheva, Rav Samoy is wrong. Even Almana l'Kohen Gadol, Rabbi Kiva would say is a mamzer. So then you could say that Kisiana is referring to a Isser Asay, like marrying a Mitzri and Adomi in the first generation. But if Rav Shapiro is talking about in general, Rav Shapiro is saying in general, any isser that is done, whether it's a los asay, an asay, Rabbi Akiva says that's a mamzer, even if marrying a first generation adomi, my mukum, how is he going to say ki siyeno ish shtei nashim achasah v'chasuna? What kind of a disapproved marriage that God doesn't like, right, is still a marriage? According to Rabbi Sheva, if he's saying his own reason, he's not just going against Rav, he's saying Rabbi Akiva says whenever there's a disapproved marriage, whether the punishment would be misas besin, whether the punishment would be chorus, whether the punishment would be a lav, whether it be over an asay, it produces a mamzer. So what case does work? What case does make what is the case of kisi and alish? What case there do you have that the marriage is chal, even though there's an isser? The answer is ba'ula l'kohen gadol. Listen to this very carefully. A kohen gadol cannot marry a grusha just like a regular kohen can. He can't marry a zona. That means somebody that had an isser done with them, married, that they slept with somebody who's forbidden to them. A zona would be a man who, let's say, lived with anybody that's forbidden to him. Let's say he slept with his sister-in-law. No, that's an isser. She's a zona now. Right? Anything which is usher. So, what about a ba'ula l'kohen gadol? A ba'ula l'kohen gadol. What does that mean? She had a relationship with somebody. She's a non-virgin. She lived with somebody. She could have married him. He was a proper Jew. She was a proper Jewess, but they didn't get married. So she's now non-virgin, and now a kohen gadol marries her. What isser is that? So there, the pasuk says, that's an asay, right? It doesn't say you can't marry a bula. You can't marry a zona. You can't marry a grushi. You can't marry an almana. But you should marry a psula. Okay, but if you marry a non-psula, so you're over an asay. Okay, but that's also an asay. What's that different than Mitzri? Umayshna, Mishum Dahabe, like Eseshin Shabakal. It's a weak assay because it only applies to a kohen gadol. There's no isser on any person, any Jewish person, marrying a non-virgin woman. So all second marriages are non-virgin women, right? There's no isser except for kohen gadol. The only person among the Jewish nation that is forbidden to marry a non-virgin is a kohen gadol. So it's a weak, and it's only an asay, so it's a weaker asay. You understand? There's no isser on anybody else. That even if the invitation says Hakala Hapsula Hamaholola, if she's not a psula, it's not a mekach. You understand? It's generally assumed not all women are virgins, right? So there's no isser. There's only isser on a kohen gadol. That's a weak essay. That's what we keep looking at. Rabbanan. Okay, now let's go back to this whole drasha. Rabbanan say that what produces a mamzer? Only something like Tikares or Mises Bested, right? And they and what's the how do you know that that's the mamzer? How do you know the קידושין is not chal? So we said either the hekesh to achos isha or Rav Yaakov Zilon Kabachom from Yavama. Yavama l'shuk קידושין is not tofes, and that's only chayv elav, and certainly chayv Mises Bested. So the Gemara said, okay, fine. Maybe according to Rabbanan also chayv elav and also should not be. קידושין should not be tofes, just like Yivam L'Shuk, right? Why don't we say that too? You know, we said oh, but we have a pasuk for Kisiana telling you even when there's an isser, קידושין is chal. So maybe that's just like you said according to Rabbi Akiva, it's only be'ula l'kohen gadol. Maybe the Rabbanan should also say the only kind the only kind of isser where the marriage is still takes effect is a bula kohen gadol, but other chayv elav maybe also not. So the Gemara said Rabbanan anamukah b'chayv elav and nukim b'chayv esay. Maybe also according to Rabbanan say that kisian applies only to chayv esay like mitzri or domi or something of that sort, and chayv elav and shaka קידושין should not be chal. So the Gemara said hani chayv esay b'may. The Rabbanan will say, look, what do you mean chayv esay? You say kisian ish achasa ovav achas snua, even though it's snua, even though God doesn't like the marriage is still chal because it says kisiana. What are we talking about? If they're both mitzrios, let's say one's first generation, one's second generation, because the third generation is a full Jewess. She can marry anybody, right? Ishtem mitzrios, shtein snuas, then they're both snuas, right? That's supposed to be, what's achasu v'achas snua? If they're both the mitzrios, then they're both snuas. One is a mitzvah and one's a good one. The ahuva is a regular Israelis, and the snua is a mitzvah. That's how the Rabbanan will say. It's mashma kisiyen ali shtei nashim. They're both from the same tribe, and here they're not. Ibulu kohen gadol. If you'd say, oh, so why don't you say like a Bekiva, maybe a Bil Kohen Gadol, Miksit Kisian Kohen. If the snua over here, like Rabbi Kiva, learns, what's the snua? Ba'ula Kohen Gadol. So why he talks about it? Why talk about Kisian Ish, Kisian Kohen Gadol? You're only talking about Kohen Gadol. So the Racham is saying it's not likely that the snua is Shtei Mitzrios. That doesn't work because then they're both snuos. If one's a mitzvah, one's a Mitzrios, must be Kisian Shtei Nashim. It's mashma that Pashut Prat that they both come from the same nation, and here they're not. Are you going to talk about a bull Kohen Gadol like Rabbi Kiva? It doesn't say Kisian Kohen, like Kisian Kohen Gadol. Rabbi Kiva. So what does Rabbi Kiva do with these objections? He says the pasuk, you have to leave the pasuk. Davidochik, it's hard to find it. It's like the Mukan of Shein. It's the only way it comes out. Thus, Rabbi Kiva says that based on Yivam L'Shuk, just like Yivam L'Shuk, there's no Kedushin. Other Lavin, there's also no Kedushin. So what kind of a snua is there Kedushin? Well, nothing else works. So nothing else works, right? Because as according to Rabbi Sheva, even Chavi Aseh makes a mamzer, or Chavi Lavin makes a mamzer, everything makes a mamzer. The only thing you're left with is a Kohen Gadol marrying a Bula. So that's yeah.
Why does Rabbi Kiva have to accept the drasha?
Which drasha?
The Shtei Nashim drasha that all these questions are based on.
Because it says Kistiyana. Because
why can't it just be shot?
But shot that he doesn't like. Oh, okay.
Like.
The answer is that's what Gemara said. Take a look at Rashi smack in the middle of the page. Would God's rules of an inheritance change based on that? Okay, that's hard. Yeah, but it's a good shot. It's a good. It's not just a far out drasha. Right. Right. Even the drasha that you say of that it's Yifas Toar, it's also what's that snua? It can't just mean that he hates her. Can't mean that's not logical. It's not logical. That's a strong argument. It's not simply like a drush that that it's not shot. It makes sense to say yes, shot. How can a person's love or dislike of his wife have an effect on the God-given rules of inheritance? Yeah, same thing. But the Yifas Toar is also a snua because he shouldn't have married her.
But you're allowed to marry her.
Okay, no, you're allowed to. He's allowed to marry these. But it's only with great reluctance that God gives. In other words, God, you're allowed to, but God's saying you shouldn't do it. You shouldn't do it. You shouldn't. It's not something to be done. Oh, you're gonna go out to work. Okay, so you shouldn't do it. You shouldn't do it. If you do it, you're gonna wind up with the Ben Soromora and all these terrible things. Right.
But that.
Okay, yeah. So
the question is, he doesn't have to accept.
Yeah. He could have.
Where doesn't do that.
Would it make more sense to say? Yeah, would it make more just because he doesn't like her? Okay, so you could argue that. You could argue that, but I don't think it's logical. I think it's more logical to say that there is kedushin in a certain case. We're saying there is kedushin in a certain case where there's an isser involved. You're saying that, well, Rabbi Kiva will say, there's no Isser involved at all, right? There's no Isser involved. So there's no Isser involved at all. But it's more logical to say that if you like one, he doesn't like the other, you can't say, okay, you're right. Okay.
Look at Yosef and Reuben.
Yeah.
I mean, Reuben was the before.
Right.
And Yaakov preferred Yosef.
Right, okay, but he can choose that. You can choose that, and but talk about the God. That's because he decided that. He decided that. Right? Okay, because he decided that.
I'm just curious about.
Yeah. Okay, why doesn't it say that? Right. Why doesn't it say that? But
we have all the time. He says.
Tosfos says, look at the last Tosfos on the page. You can't talk about really one's a good person, one's a bad person, a righteous or an evil person. Even the Rav and the Suin. Okay, I understand. You're saying you don't have to accept that, Russia. That's it. It's an idea. Gemara doesn't say that. So this is when there's a producer mamzer, when you can't marry this person, but the person could marry another person, another Jew. Is there a person who can't marry another Jew? Yeah, a guy or a nevet. So if there's no kedushin at all, In other words, this person can't marry any Jew, not just can't marry this person, a relative, can't marry any Jew at all. Then the child goes according to the mother. According to the mother. What's an example of that? A shifcha or a shiksa. Shifcha knas, how do we know? Abram told his servants, stay here with the chamor, with the donkey. We darshan that as ama chamor, amadom chamor. That this is a nation, this nation of slaves is like a chamor. What do you mean like a chamor? Just like a chamor, the child does not go according to the father, right? That the she'ein of like karach achrei av. When it comes to animals, the child goes with the mother. The child has no relationship with the father. Not like by human beings, where the child has a relationship with the father. A child of an animal, right? A whatever you call that, a kid or a whatever the term is for a child of an animal, they're only connected to the mother, not to the father. Just like so. That's why we say that if you slept with a shifcha, child is a shif. The child doesn't have it, not a Jew. And therefore that's what we said. That's what we said in the Mishnah. The kid's not about Ashma. That's why the Kiddushin is not Chalash or Tafsir about Kiddushin. In other words, there's no connection with the father. Well, how do we know? So fine, we know that if there's no Kiddushin, right? The Kiddushin we say then the child goes according to her. Fine. So how do you know there's no Kiddushin? Because it says living with a shifcha is like living with a chamor. There's no Kiddushin there. Ashkan Dotas, we find that Kiddushin is Atobis. How do we know that the child is like the mother? So we say, fine, there's no Kiddushin, that there's no connection with the father, but how do we know that the child is an Eved just like the mother is an Eved? She's a Shifra. Now, the Pasuk is right? The Pasuk, an Eved Ivri, who's sold by Bezin after he stole and couldn't pay back. He sold as an Eved. His master can give him a Shifra Knanis, but the children belong to the mother and belong to the master. How do we know that there's no Kiddushin by a Nachris? If a Jewish man marries a shiksa, that there's no Kiddushin there, you shouldn't marry them. Now we'll see that's talking about the Sheva Umas. We'll talk about others in a minute. Ashkan lo talks about Kiddushin. Okay, there's no you can't have Kiddushin with them. There's no marriage there. How do we know that the child of a shiksa is a goy and not a Jew? In other words, if your daughter marries some man who's not of our nation, Yasir, he will take him away. He'll turn him to Avodah Zarah. But he's called Bincha, your child. That means that if your daughter marries a non-Jew, it's the child is Bincha, is your child, is a Jew. Bincha, Bam Yisrael is called Bincha. But let's say your son marries a non-Jewish woman. Then it would say Kisasir, she takes away. It doesn't say Kisasir. You know why? Because if your son marries a non-Jewish woman, the child is not yours. It's not a Jew. It's the child is a goy. Elabina, it's her child. It's not Bincha. Elabina. Ravina Shmamina. You see here that Ben Bincha, that your grandson who comes from Rabbi Klav. In other words, if your daughter marries a Shega, marries a non-Jew, he's still considered a Jew. The child come from a mother. This is where we get the idea of matrilineal succession, that it goes according to the mother. Right? Pardon?
Descent.
The matrilineal descent, right? That it goes according to the mother. So since Ravina says this, now Ravina said, you see that if your grandson came from your daughter and a goy, the child is considered yours. It goes according to the mother. That's what he says, because he says if the kid would be a non-Jew, goyim don't have mamzerim. A goy is a goy. If a goy converts, he's a Jew, right? You're better off having a grandson who's a goy who can convert and become a Jew rather than having a grandson who's a mamzer. A mamzer, there's no way to getting out of mamzeris, right? L'chara, there's no way to getting out. We'll talk about that in the next Mishnah. But Pashup Shad, mamzer today, there's no way to get out of it. He's a mamzer. But if your grandson is not Jewish, he could always become Jewish. There's a solution. So since he says that your grandson who is Jewish, your grandson who's Jewish, and yet it's forbidden. Obviously, a Jewish woman cannot marry a goy. You're not supposed to marry them, and yet he's not considered a goy. Koi Bincha is considered your child. The Chaydays of Mamzer. And so Rabbeinu become about all Basral Babam. So Shral Gemara Yibams Mem Bav Mem Zayin over there about if a guy sleeps with a Jewish girl, it's a kid of Mamzer. There's a lot of sheets there say it's a Mamzer. We don't hold that way. We hold it's just a guy. I'm sorry that the Avikam above Asisrael is not a mamzer. He's just what we call tainted. So, but it's not. He's not a mamzer. But the Chari he says, since he says he's a Jew, if an Avikam slept with a Jewish girl, that the kid's Jewish, and it's not. If it would be a guy, so he's a guy. I understand he's not a mamzer, but since he's a Jew, it's mashma the Chari be a mamzer. Need a kashalave. He's not. He's not a perfect Jew, not a kosher Jew, a fit Jew. But mamzer lahavi, but he's also not a mamzer. Puzzle mikri, he's called tainted or stigmatized in some way, right? There's some stigma there. There's something unfit about him, but it's not a mamzer.
Problem with the yichus.
Yeah, the problem with the yichus is not the best. It's not the best yichus. There's a taint there. There's a shemetz psul. There's some taint, but there's not. That's it. Now, it's like, but the pasuk was this chadman that says originally it said, how do you know that there's no kedushin if you marry a shiksa? It's based. That's by the Shiva Goyim and the Eretz Yisrael. Showers. How do we know? The pasuk is ki yasir bincha. That pasuk is expert ki yasir bincha. Why the rabbis is calling from anybody who takes away, and as anybody who's going to take away your grandchild and turn him away from Judaism, that includes all nations who do avodah zarah. Even though it's not the top of the line of avodah zarah, but they'll take him away from Torah. Anichler Rav Shimon, that's good according to him. Darish time to cross. Shimon always darshans time to cry, and he says, in other words, what's the reason Los is Chatan Bam? Obviously, because they'll take him away from Torah, turn him to Avodah Zarah. So Ki Yasser is Bincha is extra, because we understood anyway from Los is Chatan Bam why you shouldn't marry a non-Jew, the Zion Umas. Because Ki Yasser is Bincha is extra to teach me even other Goyish nations also. El Rabbanan, but according to Rabbanan, Ki Yasser is Bincha is telling me the reason why you shouldn't marry the 7 Umas is because they're going to take away your kid to Avodah Zarah. My time, according to Rabbanan. So how do you know that other nations apply to? Amakra, the Acher came to Voile Valta. In the case of the Yafas Torah, it says, first you got to, take care of her nails and her hair and spend 30 days, and you basically have to convert her. And then you could sleep with her. After all this, you can marry her. Otherwise, before the Kedushin is not Tophes. And that's by any nation, not the Zion Umas. That's how you know that Kedushin is not Chal. Ashkel lo tafs Kedushin. So we know Kedushin is not Chal. In those cases, if you marry a shiksa, whether it's a Zion Umas or not, how do we know that the child is like her? How do we know the child is like her? Okay, Kiyasra has been, you could say, is speaking about, according to Rabban, is speaking about the Zion Umas. How do we know by other nations also that the child goes according to the mother, right? Let's say, says if Kedushin is Chal, if Kedushin is Chal, then then the children are his, meaning that they are Jewish like him. If Kedushin is not Chal, then you don't say Yoldu Lo. In other words, if there's no Kedushin is not Chal, then they're not his children, they're her children. So if that's the case, Kedushin is not Chal neither by a Shiksa nor by a Shivcha. So just like by a regular shiksa, the Zion Umas we had already, Los Chattenbaum and Kiyasir, etc. Right? That children go to him. Other nations we learn out from Achakain to Valta. How do we know the children are like her? Only if Kedushin's Chal are the children yours. If Kedushin's not Chal, the children are hers. So by Shivcha also, you don't need Isha Bilodeh. Shivchanami, why did you need Isha Bilodeh at the top of the page to tell me that the children are like the mother, just like the mother is a Shivcha, the children are above them also. Learn it out from Kisiana. Since there's no Kedushin, the children are not his, they're hers. And Echanami, you could learn it out by Ship also. What do I need the pasuk of each of Bilodeh? The Kedatanya for the following Grasha. Homer the Shipchaso, a man has a Shifcha. He has a maidservant working for him, and she's pregnant. And he says to her, I'm giving you your freedom. I'm giving you your freedom, but I want to keep the baby. I don't need any more women here. I need some guys who can work in the field. So he says, I'm giving you your freedom, right? So make sure you have the baby. Make sure you do all the, take care of yourself. Go to the doctor, get your checkups. I want to keep the baby. So does that work? But your blood is your baby is still going to be my eved. Avlad kamosi Rav Shapiro says no, it doesn't work that way. The child is like the mother. If the mother's free, so is the child. Chamamrim varv kayam. The Chum say, no, his words are valid. He has the ability. Both these people they're human beings, both the unborn baby and the mother, and he is the master, the owner. He could say, I'm giving you freedom, and I'm giving your baby the freedom. It's up to him. Chum say, because it says the woman and her child will be to the Adam. So it sounds like, both the woman and the child belong to others. My Kamuda. What is that from the word Ishavi Ladeh? How do you see that from Ishavi Ladeh? Omarabba, no, Arab Yosef Glili. The Mishum Shenem Shiva Ladeh is not going on the Chacham that we paskin like that say you could split it up. You could have a split freedom. The mother's free and the child is not. It's going on Rabbi Yosef Glili, who says, no. If you say you are free and your child is not, that's not the case. Havlad Kamosa, the Vlad goes according to mother. Why? The Mishum Shenem is going because it says Ishavi Ladeh. Could they go together? Mishum Shenem they go together, meaning that Vlad Kamoa, the child is free. Can also say if the mother goes with the other belongs to the master, Vlad should tell her now also. If the mother does not belong to the master because he's given her freedom, that's a shot of Ishavi Ladeh Tiyela that the Viladeh, like the mother. If the mother is owned by the master, then the child is. If the mother's not owned, child's on. That's Rabbi Yosef Glili Shita. So you'll say they'll use that drasha of Ishav Viladeh for that, even though we don't pass it to Rabbi Yosef Glili, maybe we pass it to Rabbanan, but he'll use that drasha. That drasha can be used for that. If you say, according to Rabbanan, that what would they do with Ishav Viladeh? Maybe there's no particular drasha from there, or maybe they have some other reason for that. Okay, so we come out now. What do we come out now? That the Mishnah said, again, that in most cases, not all cases, most cases where there's Kiddushin and there's no Aveira, the bride goes according to the father, but there are some exceptions, as we saw yesterday, right? There are other cases included. It's not only constantly Yisrael. We said even a Yisrael marrying a Chalola would also be a sanctioned marriage and go according to the father. And then there are cases where there isn't a Aveira, it goes according to the Pogam. Cases like that. Then we said what we discussed today. If there's no kedushin in this case, you can't marry your sister-in-law, you can't marry your mother-in-law, but she could marry somebody else. If you marry this woman, she could marry somebody else, but you marry this. No, there is kedushin. She could marry somebody. She's Jewish. She could marry another Jewish person. But if you sleep with her, kid's a mamzer, and there's no kedushin. And our Gemara and yesterday's Gemara dealt with how do you know there's no kedushin? Either you learn out from a chosisha or you learn out from Kal V'chomer from Yivam L'Shuk. We have these different drushes for how do you know that? Then the very last issue is if there's no kedushin, this woman cannot have kedushin, but she's a shifcha, she's a shiksa. She can't have kedushin with any Jewish person. Then the kid goes according to her. The kid's her. In other words, if you sleep with a shifcha, the child is a shifcha. If you sleep with a shiksa, the child's a shiksa. There is no kedushin there. Now, is there a solution? Says the Mishnah, Rav Tarfon Omer, Yecholim Mamzer Li Torah. There's a way for mamzerim to be purified from their bastardness. From their how? Kate said, Mamzer Shanasa Shifra, a mamzer marries a shifra, a mamzer Jewish. Remember, a mamzer means he's Jewish. He's a Jewish mamzer. There's no such thing as a non-Jewish mamzer. Mamzer's Jewish. But how can he, Siri means even forever. Mamzer is always a mamzer. You can never get rid of that taint. There is a way. Marries a shifra, that means a shifra, a slave, right? And shenas a shifra, b'no evet, her child is an evet, as we just said. If there's no kedushin there, shenas a shifra, it doesn't really mean he can marry the shifra. It's not the kedushin's chal, but he takes her. He sleeps with her. He takes her in for a wife, his wife, shenas a shifra, and they're not really married. Kedushin not chal, and what do we say? The child is like the mother. Avlad evet. Now the avlad is an evet. He's an evet. Belongs to him. So shikra, you free him. Nimsa ben chored. Now he's free. He's a regular Jew because he was a slave and he was free. It's like you guys converted. Pardon? You can't do that nowadays because we don't really have. First of all, we don't know really who was a shifra. But there are cases where there was slavery. There are cases in history where they did this, where they found a slave. They found a slave woman and they tried to do this. And maybe there is a way to do it. Also, you have to assume now that we're talking. Most people who are Muslim today really don't care about these laws. You know what I mean? If you find them in mamzer, there's usually, because it doesn't come from a religious family, really don't care about this whole business, So to them, it doesn't mean anything. But yeah, there is way. Rabbi Lezer Omer, a raise of mamzer. Says, no, it wouldn't work. Rabbi Lezer says it wouldn't work because he would be an evet and a mamzer. the child be an Eved and a Mamzer. And can that work? So first of all, the question of the Gemara deals is Rav Tarfim giving us a heter, or just saying if you did it? There is a way to do it. I know you're stuck, so if you want to do this, you could try this. Or is he telling you, go ahead and do it? Saying if you're a mom, so you could do this. Oh, the Evan. Or he says, look, if you did it, you're not supposed to. After all, you're not supposed to sleep with a shifra. Lo yeh kadesh. You're not supposed to. A Jewish person is not supposed to sleep with a shifra or with a goy. So that's like being a kaddish. Unless you're an Eved Ivri, right? The Eved Ivri has a special heter, but he's not an Eved Ivri, right? So he's like Chila or the Eved comer. Tashma Amalor Tarfim. They told Tarfim, Tiartas of Zacharim. You have a way. You've given a solution for males. Why? Because a male could say, look, how is he going to marry a shifra? Who's going to let him marry a shifra? I'll tell you what he could do. Go hide yourself. Go to a place where nobody knows you, and go out with a shifra, and nobody's going to object. A male could do that. Presumably, a female would have difficulty doing that because she can't find a way to go on herself. She's going to go to someplace else and to look for excuses and so like that. And if people know who she is, they won't let her do it. So I'm talking the artist is harm. You're giving a solution for males because males could go, hide. The fact that you allow him to do it, you're telling him like, and do it this way. Zachar could go and find somebody, do it secretly, but it won't help him give right away. That's if you're telling him do it hiding. You're not really supposed to do this, but go do this. Go to another city where they don't know you and find a slave and sleep with a slave, and that's how you'll be matar yourself. But you haven't set up a solution for a woman. A woman is not able to do that. But if he was telling you it's a solution, Mamzeres Namitin, Mamzeres, why? Tell him you're allowed to do this. Tell the Mamzeres also, go marry an Eved. Go just like the Eved can marry a shifra, the Mamzer can marry a shifra. Tell the Mamzer she could also marry an Eved. So the fact that you don't allow her to do it, the fact that you only have a solution for, they say you only have a solution for males, not for females, indicates that it wasn't really something you do lechatchila. A man, okay, you can go hide and do that, but a woman can't do that. So but if it's lechatchila you're allowed to, why can't a woman do it as well? The answer is it wouldn't solve it anyway, because Eved ain't Lochayas, and Eved has no relationship, right? There's no genealogy from the Eved. Meaning, an Eved, if he sleeps with whoever he sleeps with, it goes according to the wife, not wife, because it's Amadam al-Chamor. We said by a Chamor, animals, there's no relationship between the father and the child. It only goes according to the mother. So that wouldn't help her. You could say he gave a solution for the men also, for the women also, except it wouldn't help them because if she's a mamzer and she sleeps with an Eved, the kid's still going to be a mamzer. It's not going to be an Eved. If a man who's a mamzer sleeps with the shifra, this child's going to be an Eved, right? Going to be we're going to shifra or an Eved. But if it's a woman sleeping with an Eved and she's a mamzeres, the kid still is going to be a mamzer. So you can't prove anything from there because the fact that they told me you've only given a solution for males, not for females, not because maybe you could, but it wouldn't help with the mamzeres. There's a way for a mamzer to be matar his genealogy, right? His children, but not for a woman mamzeres. Tashma, let's prove from here. The host of Rav Sumloy, he stayed in mamzer. He's a mamzer. But Omer Lay and Rav Sumloy told him, had you come to me before you got married, before you got married, you're a mamzer, you married whoever you married, your kids are mamzerim. Had you come to me before, Teresin, I would have given you a solution. I would have purified you, Labincha. I could have made your child okay. I could have told you, if you're just giving a solution, you could have Shapir. That makes sense. Had you come to me earlier, I could have given you a good solution. Eliyamrit the Eved, if it's only bit the Eved that you're not supposed to fulfill it. What would he have told him? What would he have given him Eitzah to do some Isser? In other words, we're saying if Rav Tarfon is saying, you know what, there's no solution for a mamzer. There is a solution, but we can't recommend it because it's an Isser. He's not supposed to sleep with a shifra. So how could if you're saying it's only b'diavad, how could somebody tell me, hey, you come to early, I would have given you a solution. How could he give him a solution which is an Isser? He's not supposed to sleep with a shifra. And Mitzvah the Mitzvah could have given answer. The answer, or mind you, what is that? What could he have given him? Mitzvah would have given Eitzah. I'm like, so I'll tell you what you could have done. He wouldn't have told him go marry a shifra. He told him this. Go marry, like you said before. What's the heter for a Jewish person to sleep with a shifra? If he's an Eved, I would have given him this Eitzah. But Amalei would have told him, what's the Girsa here? Go steal. Amalei Zilganov, go steal, go burgle somebody. is daven, and you won't have money to pay back is daven, you'll be sold by Bezdin as an Eved, because only an Eved, the only one who's sold by Bezdin, the only one who can sleep with a shifcha if he's an Eved is if he's sold by Bezdin, according to the halacha. This daven, and you sell yourself as an Eved Ivri, and then you'll sleep with a shifcha, and your children will be avodim, and you can free them. I would have given you this solution. So if you're Eliyam the Eved, how could he give me? I'll tell you there's a solution. Maybe he could have told him, sell yourself as a slave. Says the Gemara, wait a minute, it's steal. So Rashi says, what do you mean? How could that be a solution? Just like you couldn't tell, if it's only the Eved, meaning I can't tell you to go sleep with a ship, but that's forbidden, right? So how could he come to go steal? That's also forbidden. So the answer is, so maybe he would have given that solution too. So he could have given an answer and said, there is a shita, the Gemara Rashi brings down, there is a shita of Rabbi Eliezer, I think it is. Rabbi Eliezer says that he could also sell it, if he sells himself, he could also get a ship. We don't hold that way. We hold that only if Bezdin sells him can get it. But if you sell yourself out of poverty, you want to sell yourself, you can't get it. Otherwise, the guy will say, I like to sleep with all these girls. I'll just sell myself that. You can't do that. But Bless says you can't. He could have given that answer. But the Gemara asks a better kasha. How would that have helped? What do you mean? What would Rav Samua says? Had you come to me earlier, I would have given you the solution. What do you mean solution? It was only b'di'evet. He wouldn't have told him to go sleep with the shifra. It must be the lechatchila. That's a good solution. So the Gemara says, no, maybe he would have told him to go sell himself, go steal and then sell himself. That's also a bad solution. Or the Gemara says even better. And the user of Samoy, there was no Eved Ivri there. Was there an Eved? There's no halacha of Eved Ivri today. Bamar ain't Eved Ivri noy. Gabas mancha yobel noy. Eved Ivri is only with his noy. There's no halacha of Eved Ivri today that you could sell yourself and then you could sleep with a ship and all that. El mishma noy. El lav shmam. The answer is since Rav Samoy said to this person who's a mamzer, I could have given you a good solution. You could have married a shifcha. That means he's telling Lechatchil you could do it. If it would only be the Eved, meaning there's an Isser involved, he wouldn't have given him a solution to do an Isser. And Eved Ivri wouldn't have helped any. Even if you hold like you want to say that an Eved Ivri himself, I could have given a solution, sell yourself as an Eved Ivri, and then you can sleep with a Shifra. But there is no Eved Ivri at that time. How could he have given him a solution in his later times, at the time of the Gemara? There was no Eved Ivri. So that it's a good solution Lechatchila if you can find a Shifra. If you find a mamzer who really wants to purify himself, I would guess that most mamzerim today don't even know that they're mamzerim, and if they do know, they don't care. But if you would find a mamzer and you could find a shifra, there are situations in history, there were stories like that a guy went and he found himself, he went to Africa, found some shifra, and retire himself that way. According to this, you could do it. All right, the podcast will pick it up from here at this point in the Gemara, right before the last shtick on the Gemara, but at the end of the parak. And on Sunday, Meretz Hashem, we'll pick it up from the top of Ayin, very top of Ayin. Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you. So regards, everybody.